I'm Deb Brown from SaveYour.Town. Today we're going to look at what the people in Jones and Cedar counties told me they wanted. As you watch this presentation, start a couple of lists. 1, things that you already have in the county, and 2, ideas you like and want to try. I compiled the data, added all the town's information together in one spreadsheet, and these are the results. 41% of the wants were around the topic of businesses. So 41% of respondents said they wanted some kind of business in town. Restaurants and grocery stores led the pack, followed closely by more businesses and small-scale manufacturing. Let's play a short game of Who Do You Know? Who likes to cook and is making food at home for sale? Who is making crafts or sewing, painting, digital graphics, even signage? Who do you know that sells products on Etsy? Who is refurbishing furniture? Who is making soaps or lotions? These are your possible small-scale manufacturers. So what is small-scale manufacturing? It's the folks with an idea, a product, and the desire to sell it, and not from a large factory, but maybe from an empty building downtown where the back is production and the front is retail. It's your artisans going to prototyping production into maker spaces and shared spaces. All of these can be small-scale manufacturers. Try the Informal Incubator Project. Now, we had a building owner in Webster City, Iowa, that had several buildings downtown. I approached them with the Incubator Project idea. Put your buildings in the program, and you can offer 3 months free rent and reduce rent the rest of the year. The chamber agreed to help the businesses that went into those buildings with marketing, and the Small Business Development Center came in to help with the business with creating a valuable business plan while they were actually in business. Then we talked about the incubator project everywhere. People were just waiting for this chance to try their idea. Now, the benefits to the owner, at least their utilities were being paid by someone else. Every building needs love, and this provided that. Now, the business could leave at any time. Remember, it's a way to test out the business idea, or they could stay as long as they wanted. Did it work? Yes, it did. We had this amazing Italian restaurant. They lasted a year and would still be there if the husband wasn't offered a job 3 times his normal salary in another state. Family always comes first, and that's in the code of ethics in our town. No worries, though. The Mexican grocery store downtown wanted to open a restaurant, but were saving to buy a commercial hood. In the meantime, they took advantage of the incubator project for just 1 year. The last business to be there was a new and used store with an artist who collected the most unique things. She grew so much, she moved to a nearby city to a larger place. As young families come home to small towns, the remote workers are right on their heels. They bring their jobs with them. Stanford economist Nicholas Bloom says, we see an incredible 42% of the U.S. labor force now working from home full-time. MainStreet.org says, at the end of the day, the strength of this trend will be determined by how communities position themselves to leverage this growing interest in rural and small towns. Now, Vermont has offered remote out-of-state workers $5,000 to come and live in Vermont. A third of their state is over 55 years old and are set to retire within the next 10 years. New Haven, Connecticut is providing up to $80,000 to attract homeowners. North Platte, Kansas is offering $5,000 to remote workers. So what are the offices going to look like? Well, less people for sure. Perhaps more empty office buildings. But can these be converted to housing units? Maybe. It's not that you don't have stores now. You do. However, people want more stores. Once you find out what your county needs, you want to start looking for entrepreneurs. You don't want them at first to buy a brick and mortar. Begin with small steps. Now let's look at some temporary ideas here. We hear that we need lots of money to get a startup going. I beg to differ. Every pop-up you see is almost always funded by the person. In our survey of rural challenges, money was not even mentioned as a need. So who are the Brad Martins out there? Brad was making the wrench that fits, the WTF, out of his garage. He has had 11 projects on Kickstarter, all funded, and has raised over $200,000 to make his product. Kickstarter, Etsy, and Indiegogo are places that you can look for entrepreneurs in your area. Now, small towns don't have to settle for business as usual, and entrepreneurship is the best way to support small towns. When local people start their own businesses and prosper, they help their towns to prosper too. Rural entrepreneurs are exploring new shapes, new locations, and new ways of doing business. This block-size empty lot used to have a business there. Tionesta, Pennsylvania, population 500, saw the building burn down, and the lot sat empty for 10 years until someone had an idea. What if they took garden sheds, dressed them up, and put them on this lot? This is what it looks like today. Use inexpensive garden sheds to create a bunch of tiny business spaces. It's kind of a business incubator. And you know what? This would work in a roofless building just as well as an empty lot. These neighbors in St. Paul got together to buy vacant buildings. Now they're renting to bakers and brewers because that is the kind of business they were looking for. And it's a cooperative venture. Any Minnesota resident could join the co-op for $1,000. Now what's missing in your town? Could you crowdsource it? This is in Iowa City, and it's just a small trick they use to get people downtown. More lighting. These lights can stay up all year round. They also keep the location safe. Where there are lights, there is less crime. Fishing lures, bait, kids' poles. These things can be included in another store over in a corner. This could be a start as a business inside a business. Just try it out in a corner of another store. See how it works. This is in Timberville, Virginia. Every year they set up a Christmas market in an empty field. Any business or home-based business can come set up for the holiday season. If more people are going to buy local, that means we need to find ways to fill our empty buildings and to entice shoppers to come downtown. Now, Karen Anderson set up during a one-night holiday event and sold her handmade scarves, hats, and gloves. She tested the market and found out there was one. And she tested her product and they loved it. She was set up in an empty building for sale. But she learned some lessons that night. She learned she didn't want to do business full-time in a store like she thought she had. It was too heavy on the production end, and it was just her. She saved a ton of money by not making that leap into a brick and mortar. And she still makes products and puts them in stores around town for sale. This was an empty space inside the coffee shop in a store in Minnesota. They used this wall to feature photos from a local photographer until they could rent out the space. You know, you could do this in any business with a blank wall. It doesn't have to be retail. It could be service, like your local insurance agency. Next up was community. 18% of your people wanted a stronger sense of community. Be more welcoming to new families as they come, and start working together and regionally to create that stronger sense of community. Families are important new residents, aren't they? Well, work on cleaning up your towns, liking each other better, meeting those negative comments with positive responses. All of these are just small steps to help create a stronger community. And those little things add up. Stop the negative comments by asking, how can you help change that? Participate in events and activities in town. At the very least, share it online. Mow your grass. And your neighbors, if he or she needs it, maybe they can't get out to do it. Say nice things. Even a smile makes a difference. Just because you have elected leaders, never ever forget that you are the city. Don't always expect the city to do the things that you can do. Stop requiring volunteers to commit to a year-long committee or longer. Ask them, your volunteers, to step up for a 2-hour shift, and I promise you'll get more help. Listen to their ideas and let them try it out. And oh, please do involve students, and don't just make them responsible for the garbage. What else can they do? And while you're at it, reward your volunteers. Be excited. Don't be afraid to think, what if we did this? And encourage others to think that way too. Your attitude about your town matters. What you believe, you will see. Leave the committee of negativity alone. They won't help you anyway. Start by talking to people like you who want to save your buildings. You'll hear lots of ideas, and you want to encourage all the ideas. So what if one or two fails? It's just a test of what works and what doesn't. There are just some people who are not going to help you, and that's okay too. Just ignore them. Don't waste your time, because really, they're not going to help you. Be kind. Just keep moving on. Flowers in a bathtub. Who knew that could look so good? Dressing up the place helps you build community pride. It's a funny thing. You don't notice things until they change. When you go from not so good to great, people will start thinking, hey, this is my town. When this broken window was boarded up, it was waiting for a business to come here and look like this. And the building owner didn't fix the window because he was going to build it to suit whoever moves in there. Well, this is the perfect canvas for an artist in your town. And how do you find those artists? Well, ask around, call friends, post on Facebook asking, who are the local artists in town? Begin using the process of the idea-friendly method. That's pretty easy. Gather your crowd. So who else knows the artist in town that could paint this? Build your connections. Put out a call for artists. You're going to be surprised at how many people will answer. And let them know you have a project for them to work on. And take small steps. Now you've got a list of local artists. How could you or anyone work with them to create a business? Maybe it's only one artist that wants a thriving business. Maybe it's a group of artists that would like to work together. Their city manager took that idea to bring in a local artist to paint this scene. And he worked on this painting during an outdoor festival downtown. Lots of people watched and enjoyed his work and got to see the empty building. That is now rented. Oh, and they paid the artist as well. In Henrietta, Texas, they don't spray the ditches along the highway into town, so the wildflowers will grow. It's a beautiful setting with flowers native to the area. An older gentleman in Clark, South Dakota, will drop native wildflower seeds on newly empty lots, and by the following year, that lot is filled with flowers. You can do this and use the hashtag #LoveThatLot, and then go look at some other people doing it. What to do with these windows? The ones with boards over them. Could they look better? Well, here's an idea for you to steal. The top part of this building is empty and needs lots and lots of work. The old windows were boarded up and looked awful. Our community vitality director found a program involving students at the University of Iowa, and they created this idea. These large pieces of wood were painted by citizen volunteers, and they feature important people and things in Webster City. They had an artist that actually created paint by numbers. The boards were taken to the fairgrounds. People could come out and paint as much or as little as they wanted, and then the boards were placed up there, and they look beautiful. Sometimes it takes a long time to make something beautiful out of an empty lot. Cuba, Missouri worked on one empty lot park for more than 20 years now, slowly making it better. And here it is today. It's not about efficiency, is it? It's about building community, and the community put this empty lot to better use. Let's talk about recreation. 17% of your folks want more recreation opportunity. What can you do to bring more kids in? What can you do for the elderly? We now see that families and kids are important. Get your pen ready. We're going to share some ideas. So who knows where this is? It's in your county. It's a great place to ride the water and climb the rocks. Now take a moment and think about what you already have. You've already been writing these things down. Those are things you can promote. And here's a few ideas for you. Your counties are already a recreation mecca. Start by promoting what you have and try some new things. Put together your list and then share it everywhere, online and in print. WarmShowers.org is a website that shares places for bike riders to get a warm shower at the least, and maybe some folks to visit with. Did you know you've got a major cross-country bike route that goes right through your area? Where do your parks and trails connect to other regions? Well, you can start with where they connect to the towns in the county already. And a trail doesn't have to be paved. It can be gravel, dirt, or even grass. Why not take a walk and see where you might be able to connect your trails? This is in the United Kingdom, and I'm not recommending you do this. I do recommend you put up garbage cans and bag poles in a few spots along the trails already here, and then promote it as a dog trail. Many families have added pets this past year, and now we can get outside again with them. So take your dog with you. In my town of Webster City, Dollar General wanted to buy one of the town parks. The council was really thinking about that extra revenue. However, when the town heard about it, oh my God, they were in an uproar. A couple of hundred people showed up at the city council meeting, and they expressed their concern and desire not to do it. Well, out of that meeting, one student formed a GoFundMe. A group of adults started a place where you can make your donations tax-free. And within a year, playground equipment for both adults and kids was bought. Today, the park looks entirely different, and it's being used so much more. Here, take a look at it. That's amazing. And that's just the kids part. The adult part is almost done too. Let's take a look at things the city might be responsible for. And daycare is a big one, not just here, but all over rural America. The numbers of daycare centers have dropped substantially because people are working from home. Now we're starting to go back to offices, or we're realizing our kids need that socialization that they get from other children. Now, infrastructure was a close second, both for new and upgrades. Let's jump back to daycare for a minute. Pierce County, Nebraska has added these 4 answers to their daycare problems. There are 7,200 population in the entire county. The county wants industry to step up and provide daycare for their second shifts. The city wants to help get people licensed to run a daycare and stay open. Sometimes we forget about our churches. And finally, investing in a home or a building just might be the way to go. The number of child care programs listed under the Iowa Child Care Resources and Referral Center dropped 37%. between 2014 and 2019. The data shows that nearly 50% of the child care centers in the state closed during the pandemic. So the total number of licensed child care centers in January of 2020 was almost 1,600, 10 short. It has dropped by 8 to the number of 820 by July of 2020. Crazy. Building Families will give home providers $500 to recoup some of their startup loss or to get the certification that takes about a week. If you don't have any college, they will pay for 90% of those costs in child care studies. They also give out stipends every 6 months based upon your degree of education. Now, McKinley Bailey said a lot of people think of in-home child care as babysitting. They don't realize you can make a career out of it. If you get registered, most folks can have 8 kids in their home. 8 kids at the going rate per child, if you have them full time, puts you over $50,000 a year in income. That's not babysitting money. Centerville, South Dakota adopted a local vacant building ordinance that makes it less desirable to use empty spaces for cheap storage. Fees are charged for rundown, dilapidated properties in an attempt to discourage the absent property owners from holding onto properties that could be turned into a business. They don't have a local enforcement officer. They actually 1099 someone from a larger town who no one knows. In North Carolina, Fayetteville, it's a city with 200,000 people, a little large. They targeted vacant commercial properties in their downtown and started requiring inspection by the fire department every 6 months. That's something, isn't it? And they had a fee which they waived for owners actively listing their properties at or near fair market prices. You can find that ordinance online. Callender, Iowa and Stanhope, Iowa, both very small towns, have changed their city code and added a property maintenance code for both the exterior and interior of buildings. I like it because it sets forth a real detailed plan of action, a fine structure, and a no-nonsense, do this or we will take the building from you attitude. Here's a few ideas to dress up downtown while you wait for those new businesses. Hollis, Oklahoma, population 2,060, made up this great idea. No, it's not a barbershop. It just looks like one. It's a banner. Even the barber pole is just the printed banner hung inside. This is in Roscommon County, Michigan. Which one of these buildings is not real? It's the gray one, and it's so much better looking than the empty spot that would have been there. It's just a facade with a bulletin board for flyers and an electronic sign. In Porterdale, Georgia, they had a huge community center and gymnasium, 12,000 square feet right downtown, and it burned down years ago. Now for a town with only 1,200 people, that's a huge eyesore. Today it looks like this. They stabilized just the outer brick shell, and it's now an event space that hosts concerts and food festivals and weddings. What a great transformation. Next up is housing. Folks wanted new housing. They wanted to tear down some bad housing and express more own versus rental housing. Now, it's a seller's market. Some of your towns were okay with the current housing, but several were not. And we're going to address some ideas for those towns. Middle housing. I'd like you to think differently. Try a duplex or a triplex, and they do call it middle housing. It's a nice starter home for young people, and you have neighbors. They're doing this in small towns in Oregon. I was recently in Tingley, Iowa, having coffee with some fellows in the morning. And they began talking and started planning on how they could build a new house on spec in their town because they had a plumber and an electrician and a man that owned the property and a contractor, all retired, all drinking coffee. Look around you. Who could help you? The housing market's low, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but what can we do to create more affordable housing? Well, how about a tiny house community? Now, this house is made in York, Nebraska by Champion Home Builders, and it's also movable. Spur, Texas is the first tiny house friendly in the United States. Population 1,000, and the county's only 2,500. Over 70 lots have been sold over 2 years. It's either wood or metal framing, flush toilets connected to the city utilities, and of course proper electricity. The foundation is reinforced with rebar that goes 6 inches below the ground down to the frost line. A few more things. Every town needs a few new ninjas. The historical building in Olin is stunning inside. The flowers outside are beautiful, but the building could use a little paint, a broom, and maybe some Windex. Now, the seniors don't have to be the ones to do it. Who has a friend or two who would go over there with you and just do it? Be a ninja. Here's an idea for an empty lot. Create an outdoor museum, and it could be anything. There's old cars in Nebraska buried a quarter of the way up, and they stand up tire to tire. They call it car hinge. Well, how about a rusted tractor graveyard? Or what weather-resistant or happily rusty artifacts would tell the story of your town? You could have an outdoor museum trail in the county. Give everybody a chance to participate in what you do in a small but meaningful way. These are snowflakes decorating an empty building. And why couldn't the county residents cut out paper snowflakes and put inside every building in town? Now don't stop there. Take a ton of pictures and post them everywhere. Write a press release and send it to every paper in the state. Make it a big deal. You know, you could have it be about how many snowflakes you have in your county in July. It would be more than any other county in Iowa. Here's another idea. Ask those who have junk cars in their yard if you could have them. What creative things could you do with them? Now just look on Pinterest and you're going to get a lot of good ideas. Make your empty lot comfier and home-like. Hold conversations there. Now this was a temporary art community project, but it really makes perfect sense to try for a longer time in a roofless building. This is in Lyons, Nebraska, and it could be a place where the mayor or anyone can set up and invite people to come talk about any topic. Is it possible? No more derelict properties? Yes, but one building at a time. The DNR has a derelict building grant available to towns under 5,000. Now this year they're focusing on asbestos removal, and the application period is passed. However, keep your eye on the DNR site, and I will share that link later. I do know there are many other resources available. So what do you need? This is a big list, and it doesn't mean one person has to figure it all out. Someone or a group of someones who can spend some time could do the research for you. Remember the small but meaningful steps? Here's another opportunity to help your community in a big way by doing a small thing. In Akron, Iowa, the retired farmers brought their woodworking equipment to a dry basement in an old hospital. They call themselves the Old Geezers. Today, they help anyone with projects. Students, young adults, anyone who wants some help. They've created a maker space, if you will. Wouldn't it be fun to have murals on one of these buildings? You could start a Did You Know campaign. You want to be a one-person marketing team? One person can do this. Visit your local shops, take a picture of something you didn't know they carried, post it on social media, and hashtag it. This one would be hashtag Did You Know Olin, because that is a shared space. Pretty cool. And news looks different today. Did you know both Wyoming and Olin have an online newsletter? Now, Olin is hosting a coffee and conversation gathering on July 14th at 8 a.m. at City Hall to talk about whatever comes up, including the newsletter. The Lions Club started the newsletter in Wyoming, and if you need the email to sign up, it is WYONEWS, YONews, at netins.net. It's time to start thinking regionally. How can you partner with other towns? Could you host shopping tours or some recreational opportunities? Take a minute when we're done here and think about it. Start a list. Look around you. Who do you know? Who are some folks that might be interested in doing that with you? And start there. I'll take a minute to say thank you for your time. I have a free gift for you. If you go to SaveYour.Town/gift, you'll see a 30-minute video on the idea-friendly method. You could learn how to do things in small steps yourselves. Thank you for having me here. Bye now.